Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into one of the wildest business mysteries out there. Imagine an objectively better tasting product, one that literally wins almost every single head-to-head taste test for decades, but somehow it just keeps losing the market share war? Sounds totally backwards, right? Well, that exact scenario is sitting right inside your refrigerator. We're talking, of course, about the legendary rivalry between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Today, we're going to figure out exactly why the quote-unquote best product doesn't always win and what that tells us about the deeply emotional way we all make choices.
Look at the split here. On the left, we've got Pepsi. They are the undisputed champion of the blind taste test. I mean, for over half a century, everyday people across America have consistently picked the blue cup over the red one. Yet look on the right. Coca-Cola is still the undisputed king of the beverage industry. They hold nearly half of the entire global market, while Pepsi is just trailing behind in a distant second. If people overwhelmingly prefer how Pepsi tastes when they don't know what they're drinking, it defies all logical business sense that Coca-Cola is the most chosen brand on earth. Seriously, people should just buy what tastes better, right? But they don't, and that huge contradiction is exactly what we're unpacking today.
Section 1. The Pepsi Challenge. To really wrap our heads around this, we've got to rewind to 1975. This is when Pepsi launched a brilliant, full-frontal attack on Coke's dominance. Imagine this. Pepsi reps go out to local shopping malls and parks all across America. They set up these super simple, unmarked tables and just ask regular folks to take a blind sip from two white cups. One is Coke, the other is Pepsi. And the results? They were devastating for Coca-Cola. Time and time again, the sweeter taste of Pepsi won out. Pepsi took these genuine, real-time reactions and spun them into a massive TV campaign. And it worked. Heading into the late 70s, Pepsi's market share just started steadily climbing. They were successfully winning over a younger crowd, the choice of a new generation. By the early 1980s, this caused absolute sheer panic down at Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta.
But here's the catch. There was actually a major analytical flaw in Pepsi's famous campaign. Malcolm Gladwell pointed this out brilliantly in his book Blink. The whole sip test method is actually inherently biased. See, when we take just one single blind sip of something, our taste buds naturally gravitate toward the sweeter of the two options. And since Pepsi is fundamentally sweeter than Coke, it easily won the sip test. But as Gladwell notes, enjoying a single sugary sip does not actually translate to wanting that intense level of sweetness when you sit down to drink a whole can.
Okay, it gets even more fascinating. Check this out. In some versions of these challenges, Pepsi literally labeled the cup with their drink the letter M, and the Coke cup was labeled Q. While researchers later figured out that Pepsi was secretly leveraging a psychological bias, it turns out people just instinctively preferred the letter M over the letter Q, completely regardless of the liquid inside. It's crazy. But honestly, by the early 80s, the scientific accuracy of these tests didn't even matter anymore. Perception was already reality. Pepsi was screaming from the rooftops that their drink tasted better, and you know what? The public bought it.
Section 2. A data-driven disaster.
So this brings us to a massive turning point in corporate history. It's 1985, and Coca-Cola's leadership has basically hit their breaking point. They decided they had a data problem. And, well, a data problem obviously needs a hardcore, numbers-driven solution, right? But before taking any drastic steps, they wanted to be absolutely 100% certain. Which brings us to this staggering number, 200,000. Before they dared to kill off their 99-year-old secret formula to launch a smoother, sweeter, new Coke, these executives ran 200,000 internal blind taste tests just to make sure their decision was completely bulletproof. They were totally done guessing. They had the cold, hard numbers.
And honestly, from a pure data perspective, their decision looked absolutely flawless. Across hundreds of thousands of tests, this sweeter new Coke easily crushed Pepsi. But even more importantly, it beat their own original recipe. I mean, think about it. Why on earth would you keep an old flavor when you mathematically have a superior one? The Coke executives genuinely thought they had forged the ultimate weapon to end the cola wars forever. They were fully expecting the public to throw a parade for this massive improvement.
But here is the massive, absolutely crucial point that all their data completely missed. Think about the feeling of kicking back after a long, exhausting day with an ice-cold Coke. The executives were so hyper-focused on the actual liquid inside the can that they completely forgot what they were really selling. They weren't just pushing flavored carbonated water. They were selling a piece of American identity. We're talking about childhood summers, family dinners, deep-rooted nostalgia. They were selling a lifestyle, a feeling.
Section 3. The Emotional Backlash.
What followed the April 1985 launch of New Coke was a complete corporate catastrophe, proving once and for all that a product is so much more than its recipe. The public reaction wasn't just negative, it was immediate and it was fierce. I mean, Coke's headquarters in Atlanta was suddenly flooded with over 1,000 angry phone calls every single day. People literally took to the streets. They formed actual protest groups like the Old Cola Drinkers of America. Can you imagine? Consumers were terrified that their favorite drink was gone forever, and some literally spent thousands of dollars hoarding the original formula in their garages and basements. It clearly wasn't just about a flavor preference anymore. Consumers felt a deep personal betrayal. It was like a beloved childhood friend had been suddenly erased from existence, completely without their permission.
What people were really mourning was the heritage, the iconic contour bottle, slogans like "It's the real thing." When Coca-Cola changed that formula, people didn't feel like they were getting an upgraded beverage. They felt like they were being robbed of their own personal history. Those mountains of taste test data, they completely, totally missed the human emotion. People weren't buying a flavor, they were buying a memory.
The whole thing lasted exactly 79 days. Just 79 days after the disastrous rollout of New Coke, Coca-Cola finally caved to the immense public pressure. In July of 1985, they completely reversed course and brought back the original formula, renaming it Coca-Cola Classic. Get this, the announcement was considered so significant that television networks actually interrupted their regular programming just to break the news. And the reaction? It was met with nationwide celebration. Seriously, almost as if a major war had just ended.
Section 4. Brand over product.
Now here's the wild part. This 79-day nightmare accidentally turned into Coca-Cola's greatest marketing triumph of all time, and it reveals the ultimate lesson in consumer psychology. The New Coke crisis proves something incredible. If you think back to classic television spots that touched the hearts of an entire generation, you realize that Coca-Cola held a profound, genuinely unbreakable emotional bond with its audience. A slightly sweeter product from a competitor was never, ever going to sever that bond. Ironically enough, the massive mistake of taking the original Coke away was the exact thing that made consumers realize just how deeply they loved it. Coca-Cola's biggest blunder literally became its greatest proof of brand loyalty.
When we look at how things split out today, both companies actually ended up succeeding, just in completely different ways. Coca-Cola learned their lesson for good. They totally stopped fighting the data-driven taste war and instead just leaned into defending their emotional throne. It was all about brand nostalgia for them. Pepsi, on the other hand, realized they were never going to beat Coke's emotional grip on the cola market. So what did? They changed the game entirely. They pivoted hard and built this massively diversified consumer goods empire, scooping up powerhouse brands like Frito-Lay, Quaker Oats, and Gatorade.
So what's the ultimate takeaway from this explainer? It really comes down to this. Pepsi won the taste test, sure, but Coca-Cola won the war. The absolute crucial thing to remember here, whether you're building a business, marketing a service, or just creating art, is that if you rely entirely on cold, hard data and ignore the actual soul of your brand, you're gonna lose. Things like performance, specs, and features, those are literally just the entry fees to play the game. But emotion, trust, identity, that is what truly wins the market. So as you look at your own work today, I want to leave you with this question. Are you just trying to sell a better taste, or are you selling how you make people feel? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.